Hello everyone, how's it going? I'm the Silver Fox and welcome back to my analysis series on the most notorious TV show, The Walking Dead. Today we'll be analysing, reviewing and recapping on episode 3 of season 1. If you haven't already, be sure to check out my previous episode in the top right hand corner to catch yourself up on the story so far. Just before we begin, a large number of people who watch my videos aren't subscribed, so if you do enjoy today's video, please do consider subscribing because it really helps my channel out, and you can always unsubscribe later. But without further ado, let's go right into episode 3. We begin the episode returning to Merle, who is still left alone on top of the roof of the store. However, he has already gone crazy in his own imagination. Once he returns to the real world, he realises how screwed he is as the walkers are at the door and he has no means of defence. He attempts to release himself from the handcuffs, however is unable to do so, until he finds a saw. The starting scene ends with Merle attempting to reach the saw. After the introduction credits, we return to Rick and the group as they make their way back to the camp. Morales informs Rick of Merle's brother, who is also residing at the camp. We are then returned back to the camp, where we see Morales' family and a few other characters that we have not yet been introduced to. Shane and Carl have a short bonding moment as they talk about catching frogs as a source of food for the camp and a learning experience for him. The show used this as a moment in an attempt to make us feel a bit better about the fact that Shane is taking Rick's wife and presenting him as a more likeable father figure. Glenn is the first member of the group to return to camp. However, the alarm on his stolen car is still ringing, which could easily draw the attention of walkers even from large distances away.
Turn that damn thing off! I don't know how!
Glenn doesn't seem to have a good understanding of how to survive in a zombie apocalypse, constantly making huge noises and influencing others to do the same. Shane also shares this same viewpoint, which is one of the first signs of how much more forward-thinking he is than the rest of the group, as he is taking into consideration any long-term implications that these actions may create. However, Glenn is still correct. He did get a cool car.
Sorry. Got a cool car.
After resolving the issue with the car alarm, Rick and the others also return to camp. However, Rick does not yet know of Shane, Laurie and Carl's presence at the camp. All other members of the returning group are reunited with their friends and loved ones, while Laurie and Carl are still grieving for the loss of Rick. Rick is then introduced to the whole group. This is genuinely one of the most heartwarming scenes of any show I have watched, and to this day still stands to be one of my favourite moments. While Rick and his family reunite, it is clear that Shane is both pleased for Rick's return, however also irritated that he no longer has any opportunity with Laurie after we clearly see him caring for Rick's family as if they were his own. While this scene is delightful and sweet to watch, we also are presented with our first MOTS, or in other words, mishap of the show. A crew member is clearly visible during this scene just behind the parked Dodge Challenger on the left of the screen. It is clear that the crew member just got caught up in this beautiful moment and forgot to step out of the view of the camera. What a silly goose. After a nice introduction to the group, they all sit beside the fire for the night. Rick explains how grateful he is to Shane for getting his family to safety, which builds even more tension between the two as the dramatic irony of the audience knowing about Shane and Laurie while Rick is still unaware really sets in. At the fire we are also introduced to the Pelletier family, consisting of Ed, Carol and their daughter Sophia. Ed is presented as independent from the group as he decides to create his own fire and light it even higher, which would cause issues as it would be more easily seen from afar. Shane takes care of the situation and tries to take a more authoritarian role over Ed as he is clearly a burden to have around. This is also the first time we are introduced to Carol, and it has shown that she is more conforming to the group and her husband, Ed, and therefore doesn't have much of a voice. The next morning, the group begin to take apart Glenn's new car for spare parts for the RV, which is definitely the smartest move, however it is also very upsetting. Rick has a chat with Laurie about wanting to go back into the city to rescue Merle, as he feels guilty for leaving him there. However, Laurie expresses her disapproval for this idea. Suddenly, we hear screams coming from the children in the distance. We find out that the kids went out into the woods with Jackie for some reason. I can't believe that they're still allowing people, especially the children, to go out into the possibly life-threatening woods without any proper protection. They find a walker munching on a recently hunted deer. I wouldn't disturb him if I were you. They are like dogs, they hate being interrupted while eating. The group then start beating on the walker, for some reason avoiding the head, even though they are fully aware it is the only weak spot of the walker. Eventually, Dale pulls off the finishing blow and the walker goes down for the count. This is the first time we are introduced to a new and extremely important character, Daryl Dixon, Merle's brother. Daryl is, from the start, presented to be quite similar to his brother, instigating fights and being actively aggressive towards other members of the group. After the squabble about the deer, Daryl returns to the RV in search of his brother. The group know it is time to inform him of Merle's whereabouts. Shane begins to tell Daryl about Merle. However, Rick decides it would be a good idea to pitch in, as if he is actively trying to aggravate Daryl, even though we can quite clearly see he isn't someone who takes things lightly. Daryl begins the fight by throwing his bunch of innocent squirrels at Rick, the poor squirrels. Aww. Daryl is then contained as to not cause any more harm, and talk that like a child. Rick then explains Merle's situation to Daryl. T-Dog informs Daryl that Merle is still alive on the roof, and Daryl wants to go back and get him. Laurie then states that Rick will show Daryl where he left Merle, with a passive-aggressive tone.
He'll show you. Isn't that right?
I don't understand why Laurie just changed her mind about Rick going to rescue Merle within those few minutes, and now seems to be aggravated towards him. When Rick then agrees that he's going back into the city for Merle, Laurie is then seen to be disappointed and retreats back into the RV. What did she honestly expect? For her to be able to use reverse psychology on him to change his mind? Rick gathers other members of the group to go and rescue Merle. T-Dog volunteers and Rick asks for Glenn to come with them because of his knowledge of the city. Although he is at first reluctant to, he agrees to come with them. Shane is displeased that they are risking their lives for Merle and argues that they are putting everyone in danger by having good, able-bodied fighters leave the camp. This is another sign that Shane is more forward-thinking and already more developed to this new world than the rest of the group is. Laurie is also against Rick's plan. However, he tells them about Morgan and his son, who helped him survive and return to his family. The radio that Rick used to stay in contact with Morgan was left in the middle of the streets, alongside the bag of guns Rick dropped when he was swarmed by walkers. This persuades Laurie and Shane enough to allow Rick to go, even though they are still not fully on board with the idea. Rick, Glenn, Daryl and T-Dog head towards Atlanta. The four musketeers leave the truck on the train tracks just outside the city and make their way towards the store to retrieve Merle. We return back to camp and watch as Shane teaches Carl how to catch some frogs, although this lesson does not exactly come to a success. We also have a first-hand view on the division of labour inside the camp, as the women take to more of the expressive roles, such as cleaning the clothes by the river. The group bond over memories of the past, but Carol's husband, Ed, becomes curious about what they are laughing about. We get to clearly see how controlling and self-indulgent Ed is. We also get to see how Laurie is angered at Shane for taking advantage of her and Carl while they thought Rick was dead. Back to Ed, we find out how abusive and disgusting he really is towards the woman, and especially Carol. All of a sudden, Shane drags Ed away and starts to beat on him, telling him that if he lays his hands on his wife or kid one more time, then it'll be the end of him. After Shane is finished, he receives disapproved looks from the rest of the group, even though I think he did the right thing, although he may have gone a tad too far. We return back to Rick, as we find they have entered the store again and making their way up to Merle. Once they reach the roof, we find out that Merle is no longer there. But his hand and a saw lay on the ground beside the still locked handcuffs. So, we end off this episode with the same information as we did last time, but still unaware of Merle's fate. Thank you all so much for watching the third episode of my brand new series. If you would like to follow along the story with me and analyse all the characters and events throughout the show, be sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications so you don't miss the next episode. I hope you did enjoy, and goodbye for now.